Yan Han has always had a dream recently, in which she rescued a beautiful man from the mouth of a group of zombies. She felt very puzzled. She was not a person, how could she steal a man from a zombie after eating a bear heart and a leopard? She stretched slowly, recalling the beauty of the man. The man was gentle, thin-skinned and tender, which seemed to suit her taste, but she hadn't eaten people for a long time. Yan Han stiffened his head and thought for a long time, but still couldn't figure it out. A month ago, her originally chaotic brain suddenly became clear, and her brain seemed to be energized and conscious. Her eyes gradually saw the desolate and dilapidated city, the walking corpses on the road, and her own appearance. To be honest, she was really taken aback by the respect in the mirror. Where is the individual in the mirror? It is clearly a corpse dug out from the ground. She looked at herself in the mirror, and at the walking dead on the road, thinking, it turns out that she is also one of them. Yan Han didn't remember her name as Yan Han, she didn't remember anything, and saw the female zombie in the mirror wearing a blood-stained coat. She took a closer look, as if she was in a white coat. Oh, that's almost a doctor out of 10. Yan Han was not very interested in his career during his lifetime, and after admiring his zombie face, he went outside for a stroll. There were a lot of zombies on the road, and everyone walked aimlessly on the street without interfering with each other. Of course, there are some people who are not pleasing to the eye, and they will scream fiercely. Yan Han, who has consciousness, behaves very uniquely. The zombies are walking down the street, and her elderly ran to the museum to steal antiques. As a zombie who can sleep and dream, of course Yan Han must take good care of her 3 hours of sleep quality that day, so she went to the furniture square to move a Simmons mattress. Yan Han's various strange behaviors quickly attracted the attention of the Zombie King. Standing on the top of the building, the Zombie King watched Yan Han, thinking, this female zombie is so contrived, it's really different from the zombies outside who only know how to eat. Therefore, in the remaining half a month, the Zombie King showed an astonishing offensive against Yan Han, although this offensive seemed a bit stupid to Yan Han. For example, Yan Han's Hung sat on the top of the building and watched the sunrise with a pretty face. The Zombie King suddenly called a small group of zombies and staged a hand-torn zombies in front of her, scared that she almost didn't jump off the building. For another example, the King of Zombies saw that tearing the zombies by hand did not seem to have the desired effect, so he changed a way of showing charm. He caught a dead person whose head was knocked out, and broke that person away in front of Yan Han. He took out the blood-red brain and handed it to Yan Han expressionlessly. Yan Han was frightened by the operation of the Zombie King. After staying for a few seconds, he yelled at the Zombie King in horror and ran away. The Zombie King couldn't do anything to pursue Yan Han, and was very distressed. He could only feel sad at the sunrise and sunset every day. Since Yan Han came to consciousness, she has had 3 hours of sleep every day, and she would dream when she fell asleep. The dream is not a normal dream, it is a dream of foreknowledge. She had foreseen many things and verified them one by one after waking up, and there was no error. So this time she has to go to the hospital in the dream to verify. After all, she has nothing to do for 21 hours a day, hee. After making up his mind, Yan Han felt ecstatic in his heart, and then walked to the street without expression. In 2025, the third year of a full-scale outbreak of zombie viruses, the surviving humans in Yunjing City still have not given up on developing methods to cure the virus. The mayor of Yunjing City specially established the Center for Disease Control and Prevention to organize scientific researchers to study antivirus serum. I have never seen a professor who is so kind as you, and attends for students, hey. Li Nenzheng grumbled as he docked the boat on the shore. But the person he complained about remained silent. Seeing Han Kai's unanswered question, Li Nenzheng jumped off the boat and continued to mutter, should I say, what kind of rain is Li, who evaded the mission and rolled down the stairs deliberately. Their dormitory is over a dozen floors, and normal people take the elevator. How many will take the safe passage nervously? Does the old lady exercise? Then she rolls down from the safe passage. What is this, not deliberately escaping the mission? Han Chi smiled and thumped Li Nanzheng, who was about to continue nagging, jokingly said, "You nagging looks a bit like an old lady." Li Nanzheng gave him a blank look, then turned his head and shouted to the people behind him, "Hey, you guys, just follow suit if you don't want to die. It's not like an island here." Li Nanzheng turned his head and smirked at Han Chi again, "Brother, I came to this ghost place because of you. Think about how to thank me." The Li family and the Han family are family friends. Li Nanzheng and Han Chi are also inexorable friends who grew up playing in the mud together. In 2022, the zombie virus broke out and Li Nanzheng lost his parents. Since then, Li Nanzheng has regarded Han Chi as his only relative in this world. Li Nanzheng has a sturdy figure, a body of tendons, dark skin, tough features, and a small beard on his face. At first glance, he looks like a silly big man with well-developed limbs and simple mind. Han Chi's painting style is completely opposite to that of his brothers. His skin is fair and he has golden eyes on the bridge of his nose. Those beautiful and deep peachy eyes are curved into a bright moon when he laughs, but his eyes are slightly shining coldly. At first glance, they are the kind of social elites who are abstinent. "You say how to thank you." Li Nanzheng scratched his head and smiled at Han Chi. "Did the island open a tavern last month? I heard that the female boss is very charming and charming." "Brother, I always wanted to check it out. I just have a tight hand. I go there for a drink." The island was originally a small island under the jurisdiction of the island area of Yunjing City, covering an area of approximately 2.1 square kilometers. The island was originally a deserted island. In the past few years, the urban population density of Yunjing City has been increasing year by year. The government started the idea of this deserted island and began to raise manpower to develop the island. It took 5 or 6 years to build the island. There are very few residents. The Yunjing City government has long planned to support the development of the city's University of Science and Technology. No, it happens to be the development of the island, so that the University of Science and Technology will catch up with it. After the completion of the various projects on the island, the government will move the Science and Technology campus of the University of Science and Technology to the past. This branch campus alone occupies nearly half of the island's area. Various hardware facilities in the school have also been upgraded. The zombie virus outbreak in 2022 coincides with the summer vacation. Most of the students on the Polytechnic campus have gone home during the holiday. Only a few graduate students and doctoral students stay in the school laboratory and are busy with various topics. Most of the students left, and the small merchants and hawkers on the island followed the outlying islands. After all, there was not much business to do. So after the outbreak of the zombie virus, Yunjing City became on Earth, and the island became the last safe zone. Later, the survivors of Yunjing City gathered together and fled to the island by boat in batches under the leadership of Mayor Sun Jiaxi. Perhaps it is because the island is a little far apart from Yunjing City, and the virus is difficult to cross the ocean. The people on the island are not infected. The people on the island plus the people who escaped from Yunjing City are left behind. Less than 10,000 people. In a city with a population of more than 20 million, in the end there was only less than 10,000 left. Only then did he really feel what the end is. Han Chi turned his head to look at him, simply said a line, and said, "Many people on the island have problems eating, but she can open a tavern on the island. It's not easy. I want to see it too." Seeing him readily agree, Li Nanzheng immediately showed a successful smile. His face changed in vain when he was half laughing, and he stretched out his hand to protect Han Chi behind him. It turned out that a lonely zombie not far away was walking in their direction. "Come." Li Nanzheng grinned and said, "Today was really bad luck. When I met someone who was only alone, the brothers in the back were ready for the guys. After catching this one, we will withdraw." A lone zombie is a piece of cake for Li Nanzheng, who has been rolling around among the zombies in recent years. After a seduce and a mess, the zombie was cleaned up and obediently. The remaining brothers bundled the zombies in black cloth and threw them into the zombie cage and locked them in one go. Li Nanzheng clapped his hands triumphantly. Finish, go home. Halfway through his hand, he was pulled away by Han Qi. Han Qi attached to his ear and whispered, "You have to come to the hospital with me, buddy. I'll find some medicine." Li Nanzheng looked up at him with a complex expression, and his eyes were full of suspicion and surprise. After a while, he turned his head and ordered the brothers, "You guys take this thing on the boat first. Professor Han and I have special tasks to perform. You will wait for us on the boat to come back." The few people nodded suspiciously, didn't dare to ask more, and got on the boat with the zombies. Li Nanzheng took out the map and started looking for the nearest hospital. "Brother, do you know how dangerous this hospital is? I heard from the people of the Armed Forces Ministry, 9 deaths a lifetime. The hospital is the place where the most zombies gather. In addition, the internal environment there is complicated, which is not good for us. Maybe we both have to explain there." Han Qi was silent for a few seconds and said, "My dad's depression is getting worse and worse. He is in urgent need of medication. You know how scarce drugs are on the island. I have only this one way." Li Nanzheng patted him comfortably on the shoulder, pretending to be relaxed, and said, "With me, there will be 8 deaths and 2 lives. It just so happens that both of us can survive, ha ha ha." "Thanks, brother." Han Qi looked at him affectionately. This affectionate look made Li Nanzheng feel numb all over, and his spirit was violent. "Ahem, let's go to the hospital, it's even more difficult to handle when it gets dark." Li Nanzheng stroked the map with his finger. "I haven't been to the second hospital either. The road looks relatively straight. Just choose this one." Probably the road was too straight and wide, and the zombies didn't like to wander around here. Along the way, Li Nanzheng shot 1 or 2 zombies headshot. After approaching the second hospital, the two dared not move rashly, hiding in the corner of the wall and counting the zombies wandering in front of the hospital. The appearance of 13 animals. Li Nanzheng concluded, "Achi, do you know where the medicine you are looking for is? It should be found in the pharmacy." Li Nanzheng nodded, "Okay, I'll go out and lead away the zombies in a while, and then you can go to the pharmacy to find medicine. Time is running out, you guys have to hurry up." Han Qi nodded. Li Nanzheng drew out 2 guns and rushed out, banging a few shots, and the 3 bodies fell directly to the ground. When the remaining zombies saw the living, they rushed to Li Nanzheng as if they didn't want to be agitated. The zombies in the hospital were also attracted when they heard the movement. Li Nanzheng yelled "Rely!" and Yazi hurried for his life. Seeing that the zombie was almost gone, Han Qi hurried into the pharmacy to find medicine. There are too many medicines in the pharmacy, and Han Kai's eyes are staring at the long names of medicines so intensively that he didn't notice a female zombie standing by and staring at him. Yan Han put his hands around his chest, tilted his head and looked at the beautiful man in front of him who was looking for medicine without squinting, and he became more puzzled. She didn't mean to save him at all? Yan Han hasn't fully understood yet. A wave of dangling zombies has come down upstairs. These zombies are really peculiar. They usually walk like the old man walking around. When they see the living people, they will all be like chicken blood. The thief runs fast. As soon as the group of dangling zombies saw Han Qi, they immediately became energetic, making an excited whine sound in their mouths, and threw themselves at the pharmacy. Han Qi just put a few boxes of medicine into his backpack with a look of satisfaction, but when he turned his head, he found a wave of zombies leaping towards him in various gestures. He quickly took out the gun and shot at the zombies. The consequence of the shot was that the zombies didn't kill a few and the bullets were gone. It's really stupid. Yan Han couldn't help but vomit, still staring blankly at Han Qi, who was busy dealing with zombies, and didn't mean to save him in the slightest. Han Chi was struggling with the zombies, and the necklace around her neck was torn off by the zombies and fell to the ground. Yan Han picked up the necklace on the ground and took out the necklace from her own pocket. By comparison, she understood everything. It turned out that this beautiful man, it was her lover before her death. Yan Han looked at the two necklaces and couldn't help feeling, this handsome guy is also infatuated. I have become a zombie, but I still can't forget me. It's really moving that I have been carrying the token of love for both of us. Since he was a lover before his death, of course he must be saved. Yan Han put away the necklace, picked up a wooden pillar, and banged at the zombies. Although those zombies have long lost their consciousness, they are not stupid. Someone knocks on their heads, I would definitely be unhappy. When the zombies turned their heads to look at Yan Han, they were obviously taken aback. They probably wondered, they were born from the same root, so why is it too anxious to fry each other? If you want to eat people, go and find them yourself. Why use a pillar to knock our heads? Seeing them stunned, Yan Han continued to stab them in the face with a pillar. The zombies only recognized the situation, and they all rushed towards Yan Han with grinning teeth. Yan Han panicked, thinking that this is over. Looking at the posture, they are going to tear her up. No way, she can only hold the pillar and shake it for a while. Alas, since she was conscious, she rarely fights, and this group of zombies rushed over and made her do something. In the end, the man was not saved, and he took his life into it. It was too uneconomical and uneconomical. Considering that Yan Han is the protagonist, when it comes to life and death, there is bound to be a warrior pinching a hand to rescue him. This warrior is no one else, but the zombie king who has been secretly in love with her for many days. The zombie king went out, these little zombies were so terrified, only to see the zombie king roar, and a few times tore a little zombie to pieces. The other zombies naturally shrank in place and did not dare to move. The zombie king thought to himself that he finally showed his bravery and invincibility in front of Yan Han this time. It turned out that when the zombie king concentrated on tearing up the zombies, Yan Han pulled Han Chi and escaped. This scene happened to be seen by Li Nanzheng, who had been driven over. When Li Nanzheng saw this picture, he yelled badly in his heart, "That's it! My brother was taken away by a female zombie." Han Chi looked at the female zombie in front of him with a look of horror, wondering if he was going to grab him home and enjoy it slowly. He struggled to break free, but the female zombie was too strong, only earning pus and blood in one arm. Feeling that the handsome guy wanted to run away, Yan Han looked back at him, making noises in his mouth. Oh, she forgot that she was still speechless. Reluctantly, she could only make random gestures of her own dumb speech. Yan Han pointed at himself and pointed at him, then waved his hand to indicate that he would not eat him. Unexpectedly, he could understand it, and he let out a cold snort. "I am a research professor at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and I know the habits of your zombies more clearly. So far, no zombies have been discovered that do not eat people." Yan Han quickly pointed to himself excitedly, "Me, I don't want to eat people." Han Chi stared at it, frozen in place, but he also began to realize that this zombie was unusual. He thought that he would not let himself go at this time, and he should not eat him for the time being. Let's take a look. What medicine does it sell in the gourd? Yan Han was a little anxious. This man is really a mother-in-law, and when the zombies gather together, he will be braided up. To be on the safe side, Yan Han wiped Han Kai's face with zombie blood. Seeing Han Kai's handsome face was painted into a tabby cat, she smiled in her heart, but there was no expression on her face. She leaned close to Han Chi and smelled it. "Oops, it smells so bad. It shouldn't be able to tell that he is alive anymore." She nodded in satisfaction, dragged him to the house. The sun had already set, and the city of Yunjing, which had lost power, plunged into pitch black, only faintly illuminated by moonlight. Han Chi looked at the deadly city with a solemn expression. When will this empty city return to its former prosperity and excitement? Yan Han put his nest in the underground warehouse of a shopping mall. The warehouse was very large, quiet, and hidden. Yan Han emptied the contents and looked at a soft bed. The warehouse was near the sleeping point. The door was locked, and he slept like a dead person, unconscious. As soon as the 3 hours came, I went out to verify the accuracy of the foreseen dreams. Every day, I often relapsed like this, and I was so bored that I wanted to eat people. The basement of the mall is so dark that you can't see your fingers, but Yan Han seems to have a pair of infrared eyes, walking unimpeded. She took Han Chi into the nest, locked the door, and found some candles to light. When the candle was lit, Han Chi seemed to have discovered something, showing an expression. He picked up the candle and took a picture of Yan Han's face, and slowly uttered 2 words, Yan Han. Then he added another sentence with a firmer tone, you are Yan Han. Yan Han? Is her name Yan Han? She gestured to him for a while. Han Chi nodded. As a result, Yan Han became more determined, and she and this man were former lovers. It's no wonder that he just saw a ghost. Alas, the person in his heart once met again turned into a zombie. How cruel it should be to him. Yan Han was sad holding the candle, but his face was so stiff with no expression. She gestured to him for a while and asked Han Kai's name. He even understood what she meant again, and immediately dripped out the word Han Chi with wax oil. Yan Han and Han Chi, they sound very good. She muttered these 2 words silently in her heart, but she couldn't think of any related memories in her mind. Alas, she doesn't remember anything about her life. The two sat relatively speechless for a while. Yan Han suddenly remembered the necklace he had just picked up, and quickly took out the ring and necklace from his pocket to return it to Han Chi. Han Chi took the necklace, held it in his hand and looked at it, with a complicated expression, yet Yan Han's IQ was not clear enough. He put the necklace in his pocket and said, "Thank you." Yan Han couldn't respond to the thank you in his voice. The silence for a while made Han Chi strangely embarrassed. After being embarrassed, he began to talk to himself about Yan Han's career during his lifetime. Before, you and I were the same professor in the Department of Biology. We were the same age, but you became a professor a few years earlier than me. I heard colleagues say you are the youngest professor of Yunjing University since its establishment. They all say you are a genius. Yan Han couldn't hear what Han Chi said later, because her brain sent her a lethargic message, and it seemed that it was 1 o'clock in the morning. No, I can't sleep. I haven't heard Han Chi finish it yet. Yan Han tried to open his eyelids and fought his brain, but it was of no use. Seeing her as if an electrical appliance had been cut off, Han Chi closed his eyes fiercely and fell on the bed without moving, shocked. He didn't know that zombies still had this habit. He closed his eyes fiercely and kicked his legs and stopped cooking. He slowly approached Yan Han, pushed her. Nothing happened. Do you died? It doesn't seem to be dead. Is it asleep? Han Chi stood still and was puzzled. What a strange zombie. If it weren't for him to get away alone, it would be good to catch this zombie for experimentation. Maybe it would bring a breakthrough to the vaccine experiment that has been making no progress. The most important thing now is to find Nansheng and bring the medicine back to the island. Han Chi took a candle and returned along the same road. When he walked to the exit of the mall, he was grabbed and pulled into the corner. My buddy, I'm waiting for you. I thought you were eaten by a female zombie and wiped out. Han Chi saw that it was Li Nansheng. He sighed in relief, and joked, you deserve to be a person rolling in a pile of zombies, so many zombies chasing you, they are also unharmed, powerful. My buddy, I'm worried about you. I saw a female zombie pulling you away, so I followed all the way here. My buddy didn't know what was going on inside, so I didn't dare to go in, so I could only wait outside and let me go. Wait, ha ha ha. Han Chi patted Li Nansheng on the shoulder. Brothers are worried, let's go back quickly, I'm afraid that your brothers will have to wait in a hurry. Li Nansheng nodded and opened the way with his gun in front. When he reached a slightly safer section, Li Nenzheng turned his head and asked him, "My buddy, I am puzzled. Why did you come back unharmed after seeing that you were dragged away by a female zombie? My buddy really can't figure it out." Han Chi didn't know how to explain for a while. He organized language in his mind and replied, "This is really strange, even a person who has personally experienced it is hard to believe. Speaking of the female zombie who just caught me, I am my former colleague." "Colleagues?" Li Nenzheng heard it in a cloud of mist. Han Chi nodded, did not answer immediately, as if he was reminiscing about the appearance of the female zombie. "It's my colleague at Yunjing University, Yan Han. I don't know if you've heard of it, or a female genius. She was a professor and doctoral supervisor at the age of 24. I was still very impressed by her." Li Nenzheng blinked his eyes and waited for his next words. "It's really amazing." Han Chi said to himself, "Did you just go to lure away the zombies, and then I was looking for medicine in the pharmacy, and I didn't know where it came from? Zombie, seeing that I was about to be eaten by zombies, Yan Han suddenly came out to rescue me, and dragged me to her lair." "Hey? I heard you right, buddy, the female zombie not only didn't eat you, but also saved you." Li Nenzheng made a look of eating a whale. "Yeah, I don't believe it if you want me, but the facts are right in front of my eyes. I am really unscathed. I feel that Yan Han is not a complete zombie anymore. She has human consciousness, and she can come through her brain. Control the action. And there is another very unusual thing." Han Chi hesitated to speak, as if thinking about the truth of the matter. Li Nenzheng blinked his eyes and waited anxiously. "Yan Han seems to sleep, and he falls into unconscious sleep." "What? The zombies sleep?" Li Nenzheng made another expression of jaw-dropping. "This is the case, but I don't think about the specific reasons. It may be because the R virus in her body has mutated, or it may be due to other reasons. Let's go back to the island first. Let's talk about this later." Li Nenzheng nodded in confusion, and could only continue on his way. The two came to the dock, and the brothers sitting on the boat guarding the zombies were so sleepy that Li Nenzheng woke up one of them and said, "Wake up all the brothers and prepare to go back." The man rubbed his eyes and nodded in a daze. "Boss, why are you here? Brothers thought you and Professor Han would not be able to return." "Hey, I was entangled by several waves of zombies, and there was no way to get out for a while, and the brothers had been waiting for a long time." Li Nenzheng waved his hand at the man, making a look that could not be exhausted. When it was 4 o'clock, Yan Han was awakened from a dream of foreknowledge. She opened her eyes and found that Han Chi was gone, the door of the warehouse was open, and one candle was missing. Han Chi was afraid that she ran away while she was asleep. This is terrible. In her dream, she dreamed that someone wanted to harm him. No, she is going to save him. Yan Han searched for the dock according to the memory in his dream, and walked around for nearly 3 hours before finding it. The boats at the pier have long been broken, and none of them can be used. It took the boss a lot of work to find a canoe. In this way, Yan Han drove the small canoe to the direction of the island. Here, Han Chi, Li Nenzheng and the others arrived at the island by boat. The sky had broken and the morning sun also jumped out of the sea before long, and the horizon connecting the sea and the sky was full of brilliant red clouds. Li Nenzheng and the others took the zombies back to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Han Chi was so worried about his old father's condition that he took the medicine and went home directly. Since the zombie virus broke out in 2022, Han Jing'ai witnessed his son killing his wife who became a zombie, and suffered from depression. He hid in the room all day and cut off all social activities, indulging in the grief of losing his wife. Han Chi and his father live in a dormitory allocated by the CDC. The two-bedroom and own living room is fairly spacious for 2 people. Han Chi walked into his father's bedroom, and Han Jing'ai lay on the bed with his eyes open, silent. Han Chi asked his father if he had eaten the meal he left in the kitchen. Han Jingyi didn't say a word, lying on the bed with his eyes open, like a thoughtless walking dead. He had long been accustomed to this way of communication and brought warm water for Han Jingyi to take antidepressant medicine. Han Jingyi looked at the white pill, then at his son, and asked blankly, "Do you dream of your mother and Shan Shan in your dream at night?" Han Qi paused with both hands and did not answer his father's question. "Take medicine, Dad." He nodded, "Oh," obediently took the medicine. After running for a day and a night, Han Kai's mental state had already reached a critical point. After Han Jingyi took the medicine, he went to the kitchen to pick up some cold rice and vegetables. After taking a shower, he fell asleep as soon as he fell into bed. Early the next morning, Director Ji of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention convened a morning meeting with professors from each laboratory. The professors reported on the progress of the experiment in turn. The so-called progress was still similar to that of a month ago. Still unable to break through. When it was Han Kai's turn to report, Han Qi mentioned the Yan Han he encountered in Yunjing City. He put Yan Han's photo on the projector and began to report, "I discovered this zombie accidentally in Yunjing City. It has completely different habits from other zombies and can control her behavior well. This shows that her brain it has not been completely destroyed by the R virus, so human consciousness remains. This zombie is most likely a variant of many zombies, and it is likely to bring a breakthrough in our vaccine experiment. If necessary, I suggest the CDC to the government submit a plan to capture this zombie." After listening to Han Kai's report, everyone was silent. Everyone knows in their hearts that the R virus vaccine will not be able to find a breakthrough overnight, otherwise they will not have been studying for the past 3 years and have been stagnant. Ji Zayan was the first to speak. "Professor Han, do you know why our experiments have been stagnating?" "Of course I know that the R virus is a retrovirus. The genetic information is stored on RNA. It is extremely unstable. The genetic information is very easy to mutate. The antigen on the surface of the virus changes accordingly. The virus will be ineffective." Ji Zayan smiled and said, "Since Professor Han knows that the point we have been unable to break through is here, what is the connection between the mutated zombie and our breakthrough?" When he spoke, he deliberately emphasized the word possibly. The tone, to fully express his doubts about this matter. Han Qi was choked for a while. Ji Zayan continued to slam him, not to mention whether the zombie that Professor Han accidentally discovered is credible. "Let's talk about the feasibility of the zombie arrest plan. We usually do experiments to get armed. The troops dispatched arrest teams to catch the zombies will often damage the armed personnel. Now you have to ask the armed forces to catch this designated zombie. How difficult is this and how big are the variables? Have Professor Han considered these issues?" Ji Zayan's arrogance was obviously greater than that of Han Qi. When everyone saw it, they hurriedly agreed, "Professor Han really hasn't considered this matter." "Everyone, you talked about each other for a while," and then Director Ji coughed slightly and said, "Professor Han, as the backbone of the CDC, is also the stagnant vaccine research. For this alone, everyone must ask. Professor Han study hard, well, everyone will focus on research, let's adjourn the meeting." Everyone was gone. Han Qi was still sitting in the conference room in a daze. He was also puzzled. He has always been an extremely cautious person. Whether he is a doctoral supervisor at Yunjing University or working at the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, he doesn't have a colleague. The students don't admire his rigor, so why do you lose the chain when your head gets hot today? Ji Zayan, this kid has always wanted to take the opportunity to smash him, he was caught today, and he was really unrelenting. Han Qi covered his head with a look of lovelessness. "Oh my god, have you heard of today's morning meeting?" Zheng Saiqi yelled in the laboratory with a look of gossip. As soon as they smelled the gossip, several researchers immediately gathered with their heads outstretched. Zhao Zioxiu pouted her small mouth and made a cold snort in her nose, half complaining and half coquettish, and said, my Professor Han's perfect male image has been ruined, and I blame this Li Xinyu. Why is it related to Li Xinyu? Zheng Saiqi asked. Don't you even think about this? If Li Xinyu deliberately rolled down from the safe passage, my Professor Han would replace her to the zombie city? If he did not go to the zombie city, Professor Han would not meet the strange girl. If you're a zombie, you won't be stunned by Professor G in public at the meeting. Why should Professor G publicly say that Professor Han is a human and not a god, and it is normal to make mistakes occasionally? She obeyed Zhao Zioxiu's logic. Zheng Saiqi continued to joke, Professor Han really fell down from the altar at once, and I feel that he, a zombie terrier, will be laughed at by people from the CDC for a year. Zhao Zioxiu was very upset that other people ridiculed her Professor Han so much, but because Zheng Saiqi was a senior sister, she couldn't talk back, so she pouted and walked away. Li Xinyu rolled down from the safe passage and didn't actually hurt him seriously. Maybe it was the same as other researchers complained about. The rolling direction was right. After lying on the bed for more than 10 days, he returned to the CDC. Li Xinyu's life in the laboratory was not easy. She had expected this. She had deliberately rolled down the stairs in order to escape the mission. She had also thought about the consequences, but she did not expect that the people in the laboratory would run her like this. Especially those two female researchers who had a crush on Professor Han for a long time, secretly poking her small fist and vowing to give Professor Han a bad breath. Seeing that the experimental platform belonging to his area was messed up, Li Xinyu sighed for a long time, and began to bow his head to tidy up. She looked at a few beakers with broken bottoms, and sighed in her heart. The funding of the laboratory has been tight. Since last year, the equipment in the laboratory has been registered to individuals one by one. Her life was already struggling, but now she has to spare money to buy equipment, fearing that she will have to eat steamed buns and pickles for a few weeks. While packing the experimental platform, she regretted that she shouldn't have rolled down the safe passage weekly that day. In the past 2 years with Professor Han, she has always been out of gregariousness and has a bad relationship with several other researchers. She occasionally hears other researchers talking behind her back about her eccentric temperament. But she didn't care. In these days, friends might turn into zombies. She doesn't need friends. She just wants to live a few more years. Once the CDC's antiviral serum is successfully developed, she will be able to reunite with her parents. Oh, someone has a good leg injury. Zhao Zioxiu started yin and yang weird as soon as he walked into the laboratory. Li Xinyu ignored her. She felt uneasy if she didn't tear it up, so she walked to Li Xinyu's side and kicked her injured leg with the toe of her high heels. She made a hiss of pain, but Zhao Zioxiu chuckled softly, "Oh, it still hurts, ha ha ha." She continued to make up a few feet. "Zhao Zioxiu, don't deceive people too much." Li Xinyu was angry and annoyed, and suddenly pushed Zhao Zioxiu's shoulder with both hands. But after pushing, she regretted it again. At that time, Zhao Zioxiu was lifting her foot and wanted to kick again. When she was pushed, one of her was unstable and fell directly. Half of her body fell on the experimental platform behind her, crackling the beaker. The test tubes are all broken. She really didn't expect that Zhao Zioxiu would throw down so many experimental equipment. She was only out of breath for a while and would push her. The unbiased experiment platform on which Zhao Zioxiu fell was Zheng Saiqi's experiment platform. Zheng Saiqi was doing electrophoresis in the next laboratory. When she heard the movement, she ran over. She wanted to watch the show, but she didn't expect to see herself working hard. The experiment that lasted for a week was ruined. "Zhao Zioxiu, what are you doing?" "I did an experiment for a week, and finally came out. The result has not been tested yet." Zheng Saiqi shouted with a blushing face and pointed throat. "Sister, Li Xinyu pushed me." Zhao Zioxiu quickly defended. Zheng Saiqi turned his face to Li Xinyu, and said in a bad mood, "Why are you pushing her? Is the laboratory where you fight? Do you want me to tell Professor Han and fire both of you?" Zheng Saiqi moved out of Professor Han, and Zhao Zioxia was silent. "My experiment will not be held accountable for the time being. Who will pay for these experimental equipment? It was her who pushed me. I won't fall if she doesn't push me. My ankle is still twisted." Zhao Zioxia pitifully defended. "It was Zhao Zioxia who kicked my leg first," Li Xinyu said with red eyes. "I don't bother to care about your grievances. I have provoked someone. You will pay half of the equipment and you will pay it tomorrow morning." Zheng Saiqi walked away angrily. Li Xinyu felt that she had been wronged so much, she lay down on the experimental platform and started to cry. She seemed to be all targeting her. With so many equipment, the money would be handed in tomorrow morning. Where would she go to find so much money? Early the next morning, after Zheng Saiqi had collected Zhao Zioxiu's money, she walked to Li Xinyu's experiment platform and asked for the money. "I can't get that much money at once, can I wait until my salary is paid next month? Then I can't do my experiment until next month. Professor Han will ask me how to explain it. Besides, it doesn't cost much. Zhao Zioxiu paid half of it for you." "Paid half for her?" Li Xinyu looked at Zheng Saiqi with red eyes. If Zhao Zioxiu hadn't deliberately found faults, she wouldn't have pushed her down, but now she would have to thank her instead? Zheng Saiqi was very upset by her glaring, and said, "Why are you looking at me like that? I am also a victim, okay? I worked hard for a week and was ruined by the two of you. I haven't found you yet." Afterwards, Li Xinyu softened, "I really can't get that much money all at once, Saiqi, can you pay for me first, and I will pay you back as soon as my salary is paid next month. How can I have the money to give you a cushion? Zhao Zioxiu always asks his parents for it. You should also ask your family for the points." Zheng Saiqi looked embarrassed. "Family, my parents have passed away." At the end of her speech, her voice was suddenly low. "Well, then you can borrow it from a friend." She shook her head, "I have no friends either." "You won't, you don't even have a friend." She made an incredible expression, "Well, you are usually too uncomfortable, and withdrawn, how can you live with this character?" Zheng Saiqi frowned and sighed, "It's hard for me to do this with you." Li Xinyu had thought of this situation a long time ago, and could only continue to ask for accommodation, "Then you give me a week first, and I will find a way, okay?" Although Zheng Saiqi was reluctant, she could only agree, "Well, if you have to delay in a week, I can only report to Professor Han." She nodded, smiled and was about to say thank you, but heard Zheng Saiqi's whisper when she turned around, "I really met a ghost, it's annoying." Li Xinyu's smile froze on her face, and her heart seemed to fall into the abyss with a thud. She stood there in a daze, listening to Zheng Saiqi turning her head to talk to Zhao Zioxiu. "Well, it's not easy for me to collect some money." Zhao Zioxiu glanced at Li Xinyu with great disdain, and replied with a smile, "It used to be that the grandson asked for money, and the uncle who owed money, ha ha ha." Zhao Zioxiu smiled fakely, not when he laughed. Forgot to observe Li Xinyu's face. Zheng Saiqi really couldn't talk with Zhao Zioxiu anymore, gave him a speechless glance, and walked away. Li Xinyu stood in the laboratory blankly, looking at the people with smiles in the laboratory, those smiles poking her heart back and forth like a knife. She thought, if they become zombies, or after being eaten by zombies, would you still be as happy as you are now? Can they still laugh? Why is she being bullied alone? Why is she unhappy in life? Since you're not happy, let's all go together. If you want to go to hell, you need to be together. Li Xinyu felt that she had come to an end. Everyone in the laboratory seemed to be targeting her, not giving her a way to survive. She just escaped a mission. In order to pull the people from the laboratory and even the people from the entire island together, she came up with the only quick and effective way. On the top floor of the laboratory building of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, there is an isolation room dedicated to detaining zombies that have been captured for normal clinical trials. People living on the island have some resistance to our virus, but no one has been found to be immune to our virus exposure. If she released all the zombies in the isolation room, what would be the situation? Can the armed forces on the island successfully suppress these zombies? In that case, this safe zone wouldn't be less safe. Yan Han floated on the sea for more than 10 days, before dripping in. The skin and flesh that had been rotten were all dried up by the sea breeze. Fortunately, she is a zombie, and she can live without eating or drinking water, if people are expected to starve to death long ago. On the first day when she went out to sea, she could still make a rough sense of direction, holding the oar and struggling to paddle a few times. By 1 o'clock in the morning, she fell asleep with her eyes closed and her legs kicked. When I woke up, there was a thick layer of fog on the sea, and there was nothing to see in the darkness. In order to express her anxiety and tension, Yan Han shook her hands and straightened her waist to look around. It didn't matter if she held it, she found a more serious problem: what about her oars? When did she lose her oar? That's how she couldn't distinguish her direction. She didn't have oars, she could only drift with the sea breeze, and she floated to the island. Perhaps this is the legendary destiny, fate. Once the zombies go to the sea, they will sink to the bottom of the sea, and the island is also nearly 200 kilometers away from Yunjing City. Therefore, the people on the island have been living very peacefully for the past 3 years. Unless it is a special period, the usual security is not strict, but there are a few guards scattered around the border of the island. Before going out to sea, Yan Han walked in a big windbreaker from the mall. After all, she was also a zombie with a rotten face, and she had to disguise herself when she entered and exited the islands full of living people. On the island, Yan Han lowered his head as far as possible to avoid looking at people. He looked around and sneaked up when he walked, like a sneaky thief. The living people coming and going passed by her. Yan Han smelled the scent of the living people, and was so greedy that she swallowed. She was really hungry for too long. She had been strolling around the island for about an hour, when a whistle sounded on the island, and she was so frightened that she didn't dare to move. She hadn't been on the island for a while. Was she discovered? How can this be done? Yan Han stood in the corner for a while, and found that the crowd had not rushed towards her. She breathed a sigh of relief, and was about to look up at the excitement, when a man in a white coat suddenly ran over to her, and she hurriedly lowered her head in fright. The man pulled a young woman and asked, "What happened to the CDC?" The woman seemed to be very anxious, panting, and replied, "Professor G, the armed forces saw from the surveillance that Professor Han's researcher Li Xinyu ran to the isolation room on the top floor to release the zombies." Ji Zayan's face was startled, and said, "What? Is that released?" "No." The woman shook her head. He breathed a sigh of relief, "Then why whistle?" "But Li Xinyu was bitten by a zombie in the cage, and now I don't know where to hide. The armed forces are all dispatched." Ji Zayan was startled, and then fell into deep thought. Han Kai's researcher. If Li Xinyu stabbed a big basket, Han Chi wouldn't have any good fruit. Seeing that Ji Zayan stopped talking, the woman asked anxiously, "Professor Ji, what else do you have?" "I'm going home as soon as there is nothing wrong. It's too unsafe outside." Ji Zayan nodded, "It's okay." After the woman left, he still stood there thinking for a while, so that Yan Han, who was standing in the corner, didn't dare to move. "This man is really too. What do you think about standing here? If you want to go home, think about it." Yan Han was spitting. The man actually said, "Who are you? Hiding in a corner so wretched? You are wretched, your whole family is wretched." Yan Han scolded him motionlessly in his heart. "What about you? I just saw something wrong with you." Ji Zayan walked over and gave her a push. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Yan Han lifted his hat and barked at him with a grin. Ji Zayan didn't expect it to be a zombie, so suddenly he was so scared that he stepped back and leaned against the wall. Yan Han was a little pleased when he saw that he was scared, and then approached him with a "oh" sound with his mouth open, pretending to bite him. Ji Zayan's legs weakened in fright, and he collapsed on the ground. Seeing that he was almost frightened, Yan Han didn't want to play any more. He shook his head proudly, put on his hat and walked away. Ji Zayan supported the wall and slowly got up, watching Yan Han's departure direction with a complicated expression. His eyes were mixed with the shock of the talent and the surprises after the reaction. Although only a short minute or two, he still recognized the identity of the female zombie Yan Han. He knocked his head triumphantly, and a smile appeared on his face. No wonder that Han Shifeng's zombie picture that morning seemed a bit familiar to him, but he was only thinking about making Han Qi embarrassed at the time. This thought only flashed through his mind. I didn't care, I didn't expect that the female zombie was Yan Han. To talk about his relationship with Yan Han, we have to start with the former Yunjing University. 6 years ago, he and Yan Han worked at the Institute of Virology, School of Life Sciences, Yunjing University. At that time, he had just returned from studying abroad, and soon he was directly hired by Yunjing University as an associate professor in the School of Life Sciences. Yunjing University is a first-class institution. It is indeed a glorious lintel to be hired by Yunjing University. The family members came to the house to congratulate them with their things. His mother laughed from ear to ear all day long, and even the unsmiling father rarely praised him kindly. Not long after he arrived at Yunjing University, I heard that the School of Life Sciences had hired another professor. After he had just finished his lecture, he entered the office and everyone was discussing the upcoming female professor. 24 years old, this is the youngest professor our university has hired since its establishment. No, I finished a postdoctorate at a prestigious foreign university at the age of 24, and published a lot of papers in well-known foreign journals. He is really a very capable person. Whereas a talent is simply a genius. Professor Yan took the college entrance examination when he was 13 years old. He scored excellently in the college entrance examination, and seemed to be a few points behind the science champion of that year. One of the teachers proudly interrupted the discussion and said with a smile, "Hey, let me tell you something you don't know. Do you know? Professor Yan is a student from our school." "Yo, isn't it?" One person agreed very cooperatively. Biological sciences for both undergraduate and master's degree studies are still undergraduate and master's studies. Ji Zayan was sitting in front of the computer listening to the people in the office talking about the new professor, feeling very upset. He became more and more complacent these days when he joined the job. He was slapped in the face by a woman who was 4 years younger than him in a few days. If his father knew about this, he would definitely be compared again. In his impression, Yan Han is a very arrogant woman. She looks a little bit beautiful but undressed. She likes to soak in the laboratory all day long. She doesn't like to be sociable. She basically has no friends who talk frequently. She seems to be disdainful of it. Make friends with other people. He did not have much interaction with Yan Han, just because of her amazing resume. She often secretly watched her. Later, when the R virus broke out, very few teachers survived in the institute. When the escape was organized, Yan Han was not in the escape queue. In all likelihood, it is infected by a virus. As Ji Zayan walked to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, he carefully recalled the late PPT content in Japan and South Korea. The distance between the island and Yunjing City is nearly 200 kilometers. How did a zombie cross the sea and land on the island? Just now, Yan Han's behavior was indeed quite different from that of ordinary zombies, as if she really had intelligence, unlike other zombies who would bite at sight. It was incredible. Ji Zayan smiled unconsciously. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would never believe it. Is it possible that the virus in her body has mutated or that there are special virus antibodies in her body? Will it be like this? If it really is. What Han Chi said at the meeting last time is justified and well-founded. Perhaps the breakthrough of the R virus vaccine can really be found in her. If this is the case, he must catch the zombie first, and he must not let Han Chi take the lead. The CDC had long since turned into a mess, and after the whistle sounded, the laboratories immediately heard the official and rigorous voice of Director G. Dear colleagues of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, please be careful. Colleagues of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the first laboratory researcher Li Xinyu was accidentally infected with the R virus due to an experimental accident, and the whereabouts of this researcher is currently unknown. The armed forces are currently forming an action team. Before the armed forces arrive, please stay in the laboratory with peace of mind and close the doors and windows in time to prevent being attacked by zombies. Ji Hong's voice came from the machines above everyone's heads over and over again. How could Li Xinyu be infected by the R virus? Han Chi immediately turned around and asked Zheng Saiqi when he heard the broadcast. Zheng Saiqi smiled embarrassedly, shook her head, and said, I don't know. But she was analyzing in her heart, Li Xinyu can be regarded as a veteran who has been in the laboratory for a period of time. He was accidentally infected by the R virus during the experiment? It shouldn't be. Could it be that she did it on purpose? Han Chi didn't have time to ask more questions, and hurriedly took off his white coat and said, I have to go home, you guys don't leave the laboratory. I immediately locked the doors and windows after I left. As soon as Han Chi was about to leave, Zhao Zioxiu immediately stopped worryingly, Professor Han, it is so dangerous outside. It is safer for you to stay in the laboratory. Han Chi ignored her dissuasion, only reminded, you pay attention to safety. Then he left without looking back. Zhao Zioxiu stomped her foot unhappily as she watched the door of the laboratory being taken by Han Kai's backhand. Everyone quickly lock the doors and windows. Zheng Saiqi called on everyone to lock the doors and windows quickly. Seeing the people who fled on the road, Han Chi also hurried to speed up his pace. He was very nervous. He didn't know if his father had locked the door. Before going out, he remembered that he had locked the door. The thoughts in Han Kai's mind were so messed up that he didn't even notice Yan Han coming towards him. Yan Han grabbed him and said with a smile in his heart, I have found you. But her face was still stiff and expressionless, and her mouth couldn't send a bite. Han Chi was immersed in his thoughts. When he was suddenly dragged, he was already shocked. Then he fixed his eyes to see that the person dragging him was still a zombie. He was so frightened that he flicked his hand, and his backhand was an uppercut. I saw that Yan Han, who was beaten, stood still in place. What a tough female zombie, he couldn't even beat a big man. Could it be that Li Xinyu became a zombie so quickly? No, this female zombie doesn't look like Li Xinyu. Isn't it? Alas, misfortunes never come singly, Li Xinyu hasn't found this yet, and I don't know where a female zombie came out, or how many people it bit. Han Kai's brain was running at high speed between the lightning and flint, thinking about all the conceivable situations. Seeing Han Chi froze, Yan Han immediately gestured to him, telling him that he was Yan Han. When Han Chi saw her gestures for a while, he recognized Yan Han, and the only zombie who could make such a weird sign language was the one who rescued him in Yunjing City. How can you go to the island? Don't zombies know how to swim? Han Chi realized that it was her, and the question in his heart immediately blurted out. Yan Han made gestures to him again. The general meaning is as follows, I am very different from those zombies who know how to eat, bite, and bite. I am a zombie with a brain. I can row a boat. I row and row. To the island. Yan Han gestured for a while and was a little tired. Just about to take a break, Han Chi asked again, then why are you coming to the island? She sighed in her heart for a long time, and muttered in her heart, damn, I want to exhaust her to death. There is no other way but to continue the explanation. You know, I am not an ordinary zombie. Not only do I have a brain, I can also sleep, and I will have predictive dreams when I fall asleep. Before you go to Yunjing City, I have dreamed of you many times, and then I will risking your life to save you from the zombie's mouth, otherwise you think I saved you, you are not handsome." Yan Han gestured very seriously, and Li Nanzheng led the action team towards the CDC building 300 to 400 meters away from Han Qi. Han Qi hurriedly made a hush gesture to Yan Han and said, "The armed forces on the island are here, so hide behind me if you don't want to be caught. Keep your head down and don't show your face." Yan Han nodded quickly, and tightly closed the windbreaker and lowered his head to hide behind Han Qi. "Han Qi, why are you still hanging out? It's dangerous outside, so hurry up to the laboratory with me," Li Nanzheng said to Han Qi like a guardian. Han Qi smiled helplessly, "I'm worried about my dad, so I feel more at ease when I go home and guard him." Li Nanzheng nodded in understanding, and then noticed the person behind Han Qi. "Where is it smelly? Hey, why is Han Qi hiding someone behind you?" Li Nanzheng probed and looked. Han Qi hurriedly stopped with his hand and said, "This is the little beggar I met on the road. Seeing that she poorly wants to bring her some food and old clothes, can the beggar smell bad? He didn't forget." Two smirks. Li Nanzheng entered the police academy at the age of 18. After graduating from the police academy, he stayed in the police station for 4 or 5 years. In 2022, when the virus broke out, he had been in a pile of zombies for nearly 3 years. The vigilance that has been trained all the year round is not overwhelming. Obviously he didn't completely believe Han Kai's words. He looked at the little beggar with his head down suspiciously, really wanting to find out, but after all he held it back. His brother should act appropriately, and there are still many outsiders around, so let's ask him about it in private. Then you pay attention to safety, brothers have problems, so go to the CDC first. Li Nan gave him a long business glance and led his subordinates to leave. Han Qi breathed a sigh of relief, turned his head and whispered to Yan Han, "Let's go with me." Li Zinya watched the action team enter the CDC building, hiding his scratched arm in the corner and panting. She can clearly feel that her body temperature is gradually rising, and the pain of the wound is stimulating her nerves every second. This pain spreads to her body like a snake, making every second of her breath feel ready. Difficult. She shed tears in pain, and leaned against the wall not to make too much noise. If caught by the action squad, it is estimated to be killed immediately. Her life is so short that there are only a few hours left, and every remaining second is precious to her. She thinks a lot, regretting that she has driven herself to ruin on impulse. When preparing to open the iron lock on the zombie cage, she suddenly hesitated, that is, for a few seconds of hesitation, the zombie in the cage suddenly grabbed her arm. Her arm was caught by the zombies with 3 blood stains, the flesh and blood turned out, and the blood gurgled out. She burst into tears from the pain, and her mind was full of regret. But there is no regret medicine in the world. She has been infected with the R virus and will become a walking corpse without human consciousness in a few hours. She should go to Professor Han. The only thing she is sorry for in this world is Professor Han. She really regrets that she rolled down the stairs cowardly in order to avoid the task. If she had faced it bravely, maybe the situation would not be there. It's as miserable as it is now. She really should apologize and confess to Professor Han. This is the only thing she can do. Han Qi took Yan Han to a place where no one was there, and said, "Well, now they should not be able to catch you. I want to go home. You can find a way to go back." Yan Han hurriedly waved his hand to stop, and gestured, No, I dreamt that someone wanted to harm you. I came to the island to save you. How could you let me go?" Han Qi smiled helplessly and said, "I will save myself. You should think about how to go back. A zombie wandering around the island is not very safe." Yan Han knew that he didn't believe her, and was so anxious that he was at a loss, and said, "My foreknowledge is very accurate, don't believe me." Han Qi couldn't get rid of her for a while, and was anxious to go home, so he asked as he walked, "Then you tell me who is going to kill me? When did you want to kill me?" Yan Han thought that I was going to tell you all of this, and you would definitely not let me follow you anymore, so he made vaguely, "Anyway, it is the person from your CDC who tied you up, just to harm you. To ensure your safety, I must follow you." Yan Han followed closely. Han Chi had no choice but to take her to the place where she lived. After entering the room, Han Chi told her not to move, and quickly went to the bedroom to see if her father was safe. He saw that her father was still the same as before. Lying on the bed, this was a sigh of relief. Han Kai's breath just let go. He was about to help his father open the curtains of the room when the doorbell suddenly rang. Who will come to his house to find him at this point? He felt puzzled, then he thought about it, and suddenly he felt bad. Yan Han was still in the living room, she wouldn't open the door, thinking about walking out quickly. As soon as he stepped out of the room, Yan Han had already opened the door quickly. Han Chi thought that Li Xinyu was the person, and he felt a little bit of a thought, thinking that this was over, and quickly took out the key and locked the door of his father's bedroom. Li Xinyu was shocked when he saw that the door opened was a zombie, and he didn't react for a long time. The three looked at each other without speaking, and the atmosphere was momentarily embarrassing. Li Xinyu was stunned for a while, and then broke the embarrassment with a violent cough. She coughed so badly that she coughed so hard that she couldn't stop coughing for several minutes. She seemed to be willing to cough out her lungs. Finally, she stopped coughing and vomited a mouthful of blood. Seeing her festered arm and the bloodshots spreading to her neck, Han Chi knew that Li Xinyu's virus infection had reached the middle stage. "Li Xinyu, why did you come to my house?" Han Chi tried to keep his voice steady. Li Xinyu did not pay attention to the zombies on the side anymore, but tearfully said to Han Chi, "Professor Han, I am sorry for you." She said several times of sorry, as if she wanted to increase the weight of this apology by repeating her words. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't let you take the place of my mission. I'm going to die soon. I want to apologize to you before I die, I'm sorry." Han Chi was embarrassed in his heart. "You are about to become a zombie, and you even ran over to apologize to me. Are you serious?" "It's okay, it happened that I had something to go to Yunjing City that day. I didn't mean to blame you." Li Xinyu nodded comfortably, coughed again, and coughed up several mouthfuls of blood. While crying, she said, "Professor Han, save me, will you save me? I am so painful, I don't want to die, cough cough cough." Han Chi looked at the desperate and helpless student in front of him, showing sympathy, and said helplessly, "You are also a researcher at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. You should know that once a person is infected with the R virus, there is no rescue." After listening, Li Xinyu cried desperately, covering her mouth, tears slowly oozing from her fingers mixed with blood. Before she finished crying, she suddenly fell to the ground, her whole body convulsed and then began to twitch violently, and there was a murmur vague sound in her throat, the sound of struggling on the edge of death. There is no memory in Yan Han's brain of changing from a person to a zombie, so when she witnessed this scene in person, the shock in her heart was no less than that of Han Chi. Li Xinyu twitched on the ground for a while, but suddenly stopped, her eyes no longer moved, and her breath seemed to disappear. Han Chi hurriedly took out the kitchen knife from the kitchen, held tightly to Li Xinyu who was lying on the ground and hadn't gotten up, and stood there holding his breath. After about a few seconds, Li Xinyu's eyes suddenly moved a few times, and there was a grunting sound in his throat, and then he got up and rushed to Han Chi quickly. Fortunately, Yan Han was quick to protect Han Chi behind him. Li Xinyu hesitated for a moment, as if thinking, and then rushed out. Han Chi hurriedly locked the door behind him, standing still, panting in shock. After calming down, he took out his mobile phone and sent a message to Li Nanzheng. Li Nanzheng was still searching in the CDC building, and his mobile phone suddenly vibrated. It was a text message from Han Chi. "Nansheng, Li Xinyu has been to my house, she just ran away, she has become a zombie, come on. The text message was obviously sent in a hurry. After Li Nanzheng read it, he immediately summoned his subordinates to Han Kai's residence. Near the dormitory building of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Li Nanzheng noticed something was wrong. As expected, a woman in her 30s suddenly ran out halfway. The woman's face was pale and her arm was scratched with blood stains. The blood stains were very long, extending directly from the shoulders to the forearm. With tears, the woman held Li Nanzheng's hand tightly and said, "I was scratched by a zombie, save me, save me." Li Nanzheng glanced at her helplessly, removed the hand holding him with brute force, took out the gun without hesitation, and headshot the woman. Very calmly said to others, "In this case, head directly, don't wait for him to become a zombie to harm other people. To be on the safe side, the headshot body should be burned collectively." Several people stared at the woman on the ground with flowers on her head. Li Nanzheng looked at them and shouted at the crowd, "You can cheer up Lao Tzu. I still don't know how many people the zombie bit and where they fled. Go, if you don't want the island to become the ghost of Yunjing City, just work for Lao Tzu, don't be like a woman like a mother-in-law, and everyone is too scared to move." This is the style that Li Nanzheng has always taught his subordinates. Subordinates shout a few times when they are disobedient. Not to mention, the effect is pretty good, so Li Nanzheng has been using it until now. No, after a few subordinates were yelled at, they immediately became energetic. At the moment when Li Nanzheng was teaching his subordinates, there was a man in the corner who had been bitten by Li Xinyu. The man was leaning against the corner and panting with pain. He just saw a woman scratched by a zombie asking for help from the armed forces. He originally wanted to run to ask for help, but the next scene stopped him. The woman was directly headshot by the leader. He was so frightened that his back became cold, and he hurried back to the corner of the wall. There was only a dead end. He could continue to feel the remaining hours of life when he hid. Why should he rush to die? Seeing the armed forces walking away, the man covered his wound and walked to a deserted place. Li Nanzheng walked to the door of Han Kai's dormitory. At the corner, he saw a figure sitting motionless on the ground leaning against the wall. His instinct for many years told others that there was definitely a problem with the figure. He raised his hand to the brother behind him, saying that he would let them stand by, and he slowly approached the figure. The person sitting on the ground was bitten by the zombie, half of his face was almost gone, and a pool of dark red blood dripped on the ground. But the person still had a breath, and his limbs twitched from time to time. Li Nanzheng did not hesitate to draw the gun and opened his head. He waved his hand and motioned to the brothers to quickly follow. "I have already met two outside. I don't know what it is like in this dormitory building. Brothers should be careful not to be caught or bitten by the zombies." Li Nanzheng held the gun and said to everyone. A few people nodded in fear, a thin layer of sweat oozes from their foreheads, and the guns on their hands became tighter. He was really worried about Han Qi, and he didn't know much about the text message he sent. Li Xinyu had been to his house and then ran away. If Li Xinyu became a zombie at Han Kai's house, would Han Qi have any injured? Many questions lay in his mind and could not be answered. Li Nanzheng was also anxious, wishing to fly to Han Kai's dormitory with a pair of wings and ask him to understand. Li Nanzheng reacted quickly and was not easy to panic, so this time he still chose to take the lead. After entering the password, the door on the first floor automatically opened with 2 beeps. He took the gun and stared at the surrounding environment intently, and no zombies rushed over. He breathed a sigh of relief and waved to the brothers behind, who soon followed. Han Kai's dormitory is on the 4th floor. When Li Nanzheng came up, Han had already let Yan Han hide in the bathroom and told her not to come out no matter what happened. "Brother, you are not injured, are you not bitten by a zombie?" Li Nanzheng took Han Kai's hand and looked at it with great concern. After reading it, he touched other parts of Han Kai's body to make sure he was really not injured. "No, No. Han Qi pushed away the overly nervous Li Nanzheng with a wry smile, and said, Li Xinyu ran out before becoming a zombie, and had no chance to bite me. He lied casually. After all, the real situation was not. 1 or 2 sentences can explain clearly. Have you killed Li Xinyu? Li Nanzheng shook his head, frowning and said, I don't know where I went. When I drove people over, there was no trace of Li Xinyu, and she also bitten and scratched a few people. We gave everything we met. If I was killed, I was afraid, alas. Are you afraid that there will be fish that slip through the net? He nodded and said, I have a bad feeling that this matter will not be resolved for a while. After Li Nanzheng left, Han Qi walked into the bathroom and asked Yan Han to leave the island quickly. Yan Han shook his head resolutely not to leave, and gestured, someone really wants to harm you. Han Qi was helpless and said, so, when that person wants to harm me, you go back first, and you will come to save me when he wants to harm me, okay? Yan Han shook his head again, and gestured, I don't know when he will harm you, foreseeing the dream will not tell me the specific time, maybe just 2 days. You are a zombie, and I will look forward to staying at my house for a long time. It will be very inconvenient. Besides, my dad is still lying at home recuperating when he is old. If he accidentally bumps into you one day at night, don't scare him. It's half dead. Yan Hanji wanted to make a helpless expression, but his facial muscles were stiff, so he could only continue to gesture blankly, then you find a place for me to stay, I promise to stay there obediently and motionless. My house is just this big, there really is no other place for you to stay. Han Kai's intention to drive her away is very clear. She is really a little angry. She floated on the sea for more than 10 days and was almost blown into a corpse by the sea breeze. Wasn't it just to save him, he also drove her away. Unfeeling, unforgivable. Yan Han decided to ignore him, turned and walked to the balcony, sitting motionless on the ground, indicating that she would stay on the balcony obediently. Seeing that she was so determined, Han Qi couldn't help but sighed with a sad face. Yan Han is a zombie after all, and he didn't dare to push her into anxiousness. The rabbit bites when anxious, and it is terrible for a zombie to bite anxiously. At about 3 o'clock in the night, Han Qi woke up from the nightmare. After waking up, he couldn't fall asleep, and he kept playing back the people and things in his dream. He closed his eyes and lay down on the bed for a while, but then couldn't lie down anymore, and sat on the edge of the bed for a while. Thoughts rushed in his mind and became a mess. Han Qi had to run to the locker to find cigarettes. After searching for a long time, he found only 1 pack of cigarettes. The pack was very light. After opening it, there were only 4 cigarettes left. The cigarette was given to him by Li Nanzheng. Their action team went to Yunjing City to perform missions. If they had enough time, they would sometimes venture to go to a small shop or a small store to collect a few cigarettes. The cigarettes collected were usually a few who were present. The brothers split equally. Some people will keep the cigarettes that are evenly divided for smoking, while others will choose to sell them on the black market for something they need. Of course, Li Nanzheng belongs to the category that keeps smoking for himself. One time when their team went out to perform a task, there was a small shop not far away. The small shop had not been looted before. The goods were all complete, and there were more cigarettes. That time their team of 6 took nearly 20 cigarettes. Li Nanzheng was the team leader. One person got 5 full cigarettes, and the other 5 had 3 cigarettes each. After Li Nanzheng finished his mission and returned to the island, he took one to Han Qi. He didn't have the habit of smoking before, and he contracted it after 2022. There were so many things that happened that year, and every scene entangled him like a nightmare. From then on, he started to sleep at night and often had nightmares. During that time, he and Nansheng were still in Yunjing City, and couldn't sleep in the middle of the night. Nansheng would hand him a cigarette, saying that if you smoke, you will relax your mind and body. He lit a cigarette and paced out of the room, thinking about the past in a mess. When I walked to the balcony, because there was no light turned on, it was dark all around, and I almost tripped over something. Han Qi glanced intently. It turned out that it was Yan Han who was asleep. He almost forgot that Yan Han had stayed on the balcony. Why did she just lie on the floor to sleep? Wasn't it cold? Han Qi kicked Yan Han in the leg and found that she was still motionless and not awake. Sleeping like a pig, Han Qi thought while staring at Yan Han on the ground. He stood on the balcony smoking a cigarette, and was about to go back to the room to continue sleeping, but when he turned around, a flash of light suddenly flashed in his mind, and an idea came to him. He turned his head and looked at Yan Han, who was lying on the ground again, and kicked her again. This time the kick was stronger, and Yan Han remained motionless like a corpse. He immediately turned around and went to the bedroom to take out the sterilized tweezers and test tubes, and walked to the balcony. Holding the tweezers in his right hand, Han Qi clamped a small piece of meat from Yan Han's arm and put it into the test tube. The next day, Han Qi brought the test tube into the laboratory of the CDC. He took out part of the tissue from the test tube, and after processing, took the supernatant and observed it under a microscope. After a short observation, it was found that there were normal living cells in Yan Han's tissues. Han Qi was surprised and delighted, adjusted the angle of the downloaded slide, and continued to observe. He guessed from the beginning that Yan Han was definitely a mutant, but as expected, there were normal living cells in her body. In order to further confirm his speculation, Han Qi used the isotope labeling method to label the R virus genetic material to track the whereabouts of the virus genetic material. After centrifugation, he found that although there are a large amount of R virus in the supernatant, the R virus cannot attack these normal living cells. Is it because these cells contain antibodies to the R virus? He couldn't think of why for a while. Han Qi inoculated the supernatant that had just been centrifuged into the culture medium for further observation and purification, and then sat in the laboratory thinking about what to do in the next experiment. He was trying to get absorbed, when an unexpected guest suddenly came to the laboratory. Hey, how did the master who had been on the Three Treasures Palace think of coming to his laboratory? Han Qi looked at Ji Zayan with a smile on his face, so he had to respond with a smile that could no longer be fake. Professor Ji, have something to do with me. Ji Zayan looked at him with a smile, making Han Qi goosebumps. It's nothing important, just care about your colleagues. Han Qi didn't want to wrestle with him anymore, put away his smile, and said coldly, Professor Ji is very free these days? I have time to stop by, or that the experiment in your laboratory is progressing well, and you want to communicate with me. There was a sting in Han Kai's words, and Ji Zayan was naturally uncomfortable listening, but there was no way, he had to inquire about something from Han Qi. At the dinner table last night, he tentatively asked his father about the zombie mentioned in Han Kai's PPT. Ji Hong took a bite of the meal, chewed it unhurriedly, swallowed it, and said, Why do you suddenly remember this? Didn't you all have objections at the meeting that day? For the time being, Ji Zayan didn't want to tell his father about meeting Yan Han this morning, so he just perfunctorily said, It was when I was reading the paper today, I suddenly thought of it, and then this idea was planted in my mind as if it took root, so I was very concerned. Ji Zayan thought for a moment, and continued, Dad, one or two of the many zombies have mutated. Do you think this is possible? Ji Hong didn't take it to heart, and replied while eating, It's not impossible. Look at the living environment of the zombie. If the living environment of the zombie has factors that cause it to mutate, it is not impossible to have one or two variants. For example, radiation area. Ji Zayan answered. Ji Hong nodded, swallowed the last bite of food, and said, Physical, chemical, and biological factors, there are many factors that cause mutations. Ji Zayan stared at the rice in the bowl with a look of surprise. If this is the case, then Yan Han, a variant, is very likely to become a breakthrough in their vaccine research. No, it was his breakthrough. He must independently develop a vaccine, so that his father will look at him with admiration and be proud of him. But how would he catch this mutant? Ji Zayan couldn't think of a way after thinking about it, so he ran to Han Kai's laboratory the next day. Ji Zayan said twice and said, I have been busy experimenting recently, where can I spare any time? Hey, by the way, how is your experiment progressing recently? Ji Zayan was obviously looking for something to say. Han Chi was too lazy to talk to him, did not answer, and looked down at the report. Ji Zayan glared at him fiercely, and couldn't bear his anger. Hey, Professor Han, the female zombie in your PPT last time. Ji Zayan said halfway, stopped again, and looked at Han Chi with a smile. Han Chi raised his head and asked, What? Where did you meet the female zombie in Yunjing City? Didn't you take the lead in opposing opinions at the last meeting? Why are you interested again? After speaking, he lowered his head and flipped through the paper. At that time, I was also very hot-headed. I didn't think too much. It's not strange, it's not strange. Later, I thought about your PPT at the meeting. I always found something a bit strange, but I couldn't understand what was strange. This morning I suddenly thought about it. I see, the female zombie in your PPT looks familiar. It seems to be a colleague from Yunjing University before, do you remember? Han Chi raised his head, looked at him blankly, shook his head, and said nothing. What's the name? I remembered it this morning, and now I forgot it. Ji Zayan knocked on the desktop with his index finger while pretending to try hard to remember. Suddenly, he slammed the desktop and said loudly, Yan, what here? Why did I forget it again? He said with a distressed look, but his eyes did not let go of any of Han Kai's subtle expressions. Yan Han. Han Chi looked at him and answered. He almost forgot that Ji Zayan is also a teacher at the Institute of Virology at Yunjing University. Yan Han has always been a man in their university, and his academic research ability is too strong to say. The teachers at the Institute of Virology should have been impressed with her, and it is not uncommon for Ji Zayan to recognize her. Right. Ji Zayan quickly realized, it seems that you also remember her, then do you know that the female zombie you met in Yunjing City is Yan Han? I didn't pay attention before, you only remembered it when you said it. Han Chi continued to reply blankly, without any waves on his face. Ji Zayan Chang let out a long oh and said, later, I thought about it. The zombie mutation you mentioned is also very possible. For example, the environment in which it once stayed has factors that caused it to mutate, like the radiation area, chemical industry park or something. So I specifically came to ask you where you met Yan Han in Yunjing City. I'm considering whether to draw up a detailed arrest plan and submit it to the boss. Han Chi couldn't figure out what medicine Ji Zayan actually sold in the gourd, so he just perfunctorily. I don't know the exact location. I met it at night. The electricity in Yunjing City stopped early. At night, the whole city was completely dark, and I couldn't tell the direction. That's it. Ji Zayan said, disappointed in his tone. Oh, yes, what you said in the last meeting was not very clear, I don't understand it. You said that Yan Han can control his behavior well. Human consciousness remains. What do you infer from its behavior? Can you tell me more specifically? Han Chi looked at Ji Zayan, who was sitting on the experimental table, wondering, why did he suddenly become so concerned about this matter? For a while, he hadn't figured out how to answer him, he was thinking, and suddenly, the stopwatch hung on the experiment table rang. He breathed a sigh of relief in his heart, thinking that he finally didn't have to do Tai Chi with him anymore. Looking at Ji Zayan's posture, he should be trying to confuse him, but he can't figure out what his purpose is. He was only thinking about how to find a breakthrough in Yan Han's cells, and he didn't bother to guess Ji Zayan's purpose. Sorry, it's time for my experiment. I'm going to the next laboratory to do the experiment. I will have time to answer your questions the next day," said Han Qi and left without looking back, leaving Ji Zayan silently looking at his back. Ji Zayan saw that Han Qi was wary, so it was a bit difficult to get things out of his mouth. He stood in Han Kai's laboratory for a while, and then left angrily. Because Li Xinyu's zombie incident occurred on May 17, the armed forces referred to this incident as the 517 incident for record purposes. Since the 5.17 incident, Su Zongheng, the Minister of the Armed Forces, immediately organized day and night patrols across the island by various action teams. The entire island was under martial law and a curfew was imposed. In the next half-month, the action team killed many zombies one after another. The more zombies they killed, the more panicked they were, because no one knew when they were heads. These zombies are like a malignant infectious disease. As long as there is a fish that slips through the net, the disease will continue to spread. In the dark night, Li Nenzheng had been standing and yawning several times, and his eyes were sore, itchy, and painful. The brothers were also listless. He discussed with the captain of the second team Zhou Zihan and spoke to let everyone rest for a while. Li Nenzheng swayed to the corner of no one, picked up the dangling cigarette case in his pocket, took out a cigarette and lit it. He exhaled a mouthful of white mist very comfortably, as if the exhaustion of his body was also vomited out with the smoke. Nothing is more refreshing than smoking a cigarette when you are sleepy. Alas, nowadays, this is a rare thing on the island. Recently, he has smoked a lot on night shifts, and the inventory at home is running out. He is really embarrassed to smoke in front of his brothers. Halfway through smoking the cigarette, Zhou Zihan walked over. The two looked at each other in embarrassment. Li Nenzheng paused for half a second and hurriedly took the cigarette and handed it to him. "Brother, come one." Zhou Zihan caught it with a smile, took out the lighter in his arms and lit it. "My few cigarettes had been smoked as early as half a month ago. Cigarettes are not easy to find on the island. I originally planned to quit like this. But when I smelled your cigarettes, I became addicted to cigarettes again. I couldn't bear it. I walked over when I lived, he. I don't have much in stock. I was on duty at night, so I tried to avoid smoking one, and I am embarrassed to smoke it in front of my brothers." Li Nenzheng spoke to him without a word, and took out the cigarette case. "On the last cigarette. When did you say this is ahead? This zombie can't be killed, and another one pops up from time to time. I always feel like something is wrong." Zhou Zihan spit out a mouthful of white mist and slowly said. Li Nenzheng turned his gaze to the distance and said, "I also feel a little unusual. We patrol day and night. Generally speaking, zombies should be easily exposed. They don't have a brain and only know how to eat people." Li Nenzheng hesitated. "Yes, this time the situation is like one or two zombies deliberately hid, so that we will not find them, so new victims will always appear, and we haven't found Li Xinya yet." "Yes, we haven't found the source. The unification of the island is so big, is it possible that she has evaporated? Yeah, a mindless zombie can hide so deep? It's really weird." Zhou Zihan trampled the cigarette out and continued, "Hey, this 517 incident has not been completely resolved yet, on the island. What disappearance happened again? It made my brain hurt. If something goes wrong, the pressure will only be blindly put on top. After all, it is people like us who are sad. Isn't it?" As they said, the two walked to the team one after another. At 3 o'clock in the morning, Yan Han lay motionless on the ground as always, but his eyes were turning slightly, like a normal sleeping person, but he wouldn't turn over. Yan Han in the dream is like a wisp of soul without feet, drifting to the side of a forest. There is a young flirting couple beside the forest, who are getting tired of cuddling and cuddling crookedly. "Why did you bring me here? It's so eerie and scary." The woman hurriedly got into the man's arms like a frightened little white rabbit. The man proudly hugged the woman's delicate body, rubbed her shoulders and soothed, "I will protect you, don't be afraid," as he said, rubbing the woman's soft and plump earlobes. The man gave the woman a smirk and said, "Go, let's go into the woods. It's exciting." Yan Han floated on the side, pouting his lips and said, "Hey, are you going to stage a passionate show next? In other words, why does she have such a dream?" Yan Han wanted to leave, but his body involuntarily followed the couple into the woods. The man found a piece of soft turf, pushed the woman down to the ground, and began to pick up the woman's clothes anxiously. The woman screamed and pushed the man's hand away, with an excited smile in her scream, which showed that she didn't really want to refuse. Seeing the couple's body almost hung up, Yan Han Pio blushed from the side, and shyly covered her eyes with her hands, but when she heard the woman's breathlessness, again can't help but peek away. The man and the woman were in their climax period, and there was an abnormal rustling in the depths of the woods. This sound did not attract the attention of the lovers. The two of them were still carrying on the ecstasy of ecstasy. That strange voice was getting closer and clearer, the footsteps of zombies and their excited cry. The couple had noticed something was wrong, and the woman pushed the sweaty man hard, a little scared, and said, "My dear, what is this sound?" Where does the man have time to pay attention to, continue to kiss the woman's tender neck, and said perfunctorily, "Whatever his voice, is it possible that there are still tigers here, ha ha ha." The man's laughter had not yet broken, and a zombie with a quicker foot had already rushed in front of them. Before the two of them could react, they bit off half of the man's face and cut through the night sky with a scream. Blood splashed on the woman's face, and the woman screamed back. She wanted to stand up and escape, but her legs were so weak that she had no strength, and she could only rub against the grass helplessly and in horror. Soon, the remaining zombies also rushed over. In just a few minutes, the two naked people had been bitten to a bloody, human-like appearance. Yan Han was frightened by this scene of flying flesh and blood. Although she was also a zombie, she had seen many scenes of zombies eating people, but it was the first time in her memory that it was as shocking as before. Where is this forest where so many zombies are hidden? After the zombies finished eating, she slowly drifted to the depths of the woods with the group of zombies. In the depths of the woods, she saw Li Xinyu standing in the dark. Immediately, she woke up from her dream, walked slowly into the living room, and looked at the clock hanging in the living room, exactly 4 o'clock in the morning. She stood in the living room staring at the wall clock for a while, and noticed a little yellow fire on the balcony. She walked over and saw Han Chi smoking against the night sky. Yan Han asked Han Chi why he didn't sleep with gestures. Han Chi breathed out a mouthful of white mist into the night sky and replied faintly, "Can't sleep." She continued to gesture and ask Han Chi Island if there are forests. Han Chi said, "There are a lot of small forests on the island, what's wrong?" Yan Han stared at the night sky for a long time like a robot powering off. Han Chi saw that she hadn't answered, so he stepped on the cigarette and prepared to return to the room. Yan Han suddenly grabbed him again, gestured and told him everything she had seen in her foreseen dream. This time it was Han Kai's turn to stare at the night in a daze. He looked at her in disbelief and asked, "Where is that piece of wood?" Yan Han shook his head, saying that he didn't know. "How many zombies are there in the forest?" She gestured, "About 20 or so." "So many, are still hidden in the woods and can't come out? How is it possible?" Han Kai's voice was low, as if he was questioning in his heart. But he had to believe in Yan Han's so-called predictive dreams, because this zombie was so special that he could no longer judge the credibility of this matter with conventional thinking. One thing he has always felt strange is that after Li Xinyu's zombie, he witnessed that it instinctively wanted to attack him. At that time, Yan Han blocked him in time, and Li Xinyu took the door after he reacted. Reaction? Do zombies still have the ability to analyze the situation? It feels that Yan Han is not easy to deal with, so it just ran out to find other prey? According to Nan Sheng's description, Li Xinyu should have bitten a lot of people after he went out. Then the source of the zombie outbreak should be near their dormitory building, but no matter which part of the forest on the island is some distance away from the dormitory building, those zombies are also how to successfully evade the patrol of the action team and hide in the woods. Also, if Yan Han's dream is true, then the so-called disappearance on the island recently is not a disappearance, but was eaten by zombies hidden in the forest. Suddenly, an electric light flashed in Han Kai's mind, and he had a very bad premonition. The next day, Han Chi asked the Center for Disease Control and Prevention for a half-day vacation, and stayed at the door of Li Nanshen's dormitory early in the morning. Li Nansheng changed shifts at 6 in the morning. He dragged his tired body toward the apartment. From a distance, he saw a familiar figure standing at the door of their apartment building. He saw that it was Han Chi, but he wondered why Han Chi came to him at this point. "Achi, why did you come at this point? It's a little urgent to find you." Li Nanshen's expression immediately became serious and said, Go up and say." After entering the door, Li Nansheng hung the key on the hook on the wall, poured 2 cups of boiling water into the kitchen, and a few pieces of tea leaves pitifully floating on the water. "Don't count on coffee, there is not much tea left, so let's drink it." Han Chi nodded, expressing his understanding. After taking a sip of the tea in the cup, the tea was so weak that he could only smell a little tea. Han Chi waited for Li Nansheng to drink a few sips of tea to relieve his tired brain, and then began to lie. "I suddenly thought of Li Xinyu last night." Han Chi suddenly stopped in the middle of speaking, as if he was organizing language. "What happened to Li Xinyu?" Li Nansheng asked hurriedly. "Did your action team patrol a few woods on the island when patrolling?" Li Nansheng was taken aback for a moment, and shook his head. "The operation team is short of manpower. Where can I go to patrol what woods?" "That's right." Han Chi said solemnly, "You haven't found Li Xinyu after patrolling for more than half a month? I guess she might be hiding in the woods." Li Nansheng laughed and said instinctively, "How is it possible? Li Xinyu is a zombie, Achi." Han Chi was silent for a while before he said, "Nansheng, do you think there is such a possibility? Those zombies have changed. They have the intelligence to think, just like carnivores. They set some traps for their prey in order to survive or prey." When Li Nansheng heard Han Kai's words, his eyes widened in horror, and he wanted to refute, but he couldn't say anything for a while. "How is this possible? Nansheng, don't you think that the islands are so big, your squad patrols day and night for more than half a month, but haven't encountered Li Xinyu once, don't you think it's weird?" Seeing Li Nansheng didn't answer, Han Chi continued, "If you ran into her during the patrol, but she escaped, that makes sense, but you haven't even touched it. Isn't this strange? This thing really feels strange to me. Nansheng, I suggest that you immediately organize an action team to inspect several forests on the island one by one." "Immediately?" Li Nansheng was a little unbelievable. "Do you want to be in such a hurry?" Han Chi nodded his head and said, "I suspect that the recent disappearances on the island were not caused by humans, but by zombies." "That's impossible. If so many missing people are bitten by zombies, it's impossible not to meet them when we patrol. What if they are all hidden in the woods?" Han Chi asked back. Li Nansheng laughed and said, "It's even more impossible. So many zombies say they hide in the forest, and they are not human. Besides, what do they hide in the forest for?" Seeing that he had not been able to convince Li Nansheng, Han Chi scratched his head in a hurry, and calmed down for a while and said, "Nansheng, let's change our mindset and imagine those zombies as animals with only beasts and not humans. Their only purpose is to prey and hunt. But their current group is too small to compete with us, so they must hide in the dark to slowly expand their group, wait until the group expands to a certain extent, and then flood into wanton predation." Li Nansheng was shocked by Han Kai's theory and did not react for a long time. "Brother, there are too many factors for you to speculate here. Why are you sure that Li Xinyu has changed? The disappearance is related to zombies?" The zombies must be hidden in the woods. Han Chi sighed anxiously, thinking that this argument would be endless. He couldn't tell Nansheng that there were zombies in his family who only had predictive dreams. These were all the zombies told him. Nansheng, the Han, and Li family are family friends, we are born and die many times, today you believe me once, brothers will never cheat you. The logic is not good, Han Chi began to play the emotional card. Brother, what are you talking about? Of course you won't cheat me, but what you said is incredible. Nansheng, I would rather believe this matter if it is not credible or not. If the facts are really as I guess, the consequences will be unimaginable. After thinking for a while, Li Nansheng nodded, and decided to trust his brother anyway. In order to save time, Li Nansheng divided his team into 3 groups ABC, and the 3 groups patrolled 3 forests on the island at the same time. The person in charge of each group wears a walkie-talkie, and immediately reports through the walkie-talkie whenever there is a situation. The person in charge of Group A is me, the person in charge of Group B is Dizzy, and the person in charge of Group C is A Yang. The personnel of Group A are responsible for patrolling the forest in the north, the personnel of Group B are responsible for patrolling the forest in the southwest, and the personnel of Group C are responsible patrol the forest in the southeast direction. The purpose of this mission is to check whether there are zombies hidden in the forest. Therefore, safety first, no matter which group finds traces of zombies, immediately retreat and report, do you understand? Li Nansheng saw the members of a team were languid, and the last roar was extremely loud. And the players just dragged the long tone, reluctantly replied, listen clearly white. Li Nansheng couldn't help it. He knew that the brothers were very tired after patrolling all night. Suddenly they had to perform some urgent tasks during the day, and everyone was impatient, so he couldn't bear to reprimand them again. If you understand, then start to act. The 3 forests on the island are on the edge of the island, looking lush and lush from a distance. Because the woods are too dense, the light in the woods is not very good during the day, and it is a bit gloomy, making the scalp numb. Brother Tao, what are you doing with the captain? Our brothers have been patrolling all night, and what tasks need to be performed during the day? We are not in iron fights. And I just asked the people in the second team, they didn't receive it at all. What is the urgent task? The people in our team have to be on duty. Brother Tao, what do you say about this? Chen Tao's eyes were astringent, and his head was dizzy like a ball of paste. He was too lazy to deal with the complaining team member. He had no choice but to reply, the captain's arrangement, you ask me, why should I ask? Who? Brother, don't you understand, wondering? You are the person in charge of Group B. I thought you. The man was interrupted impatiently by Chen Tao before he said the word no. Get out of my way, I'm very annoying, you are chirping like a fly in my ears, so annoying. The man was dumbfounded, but he didn't dare to attack, so he could only walk to the back of the team sadly. Group B personnel were walking listlessly in the woods, and suddenly, one of the team members yelled. Chen Tao was so scared that he turned around and cursed, what the hell, I was shocked. The man's voice trembled slightly and said, Brother Tao, there is blood on the ground. Chen Tao was stunned, realizing the seriousness of the matter, and hurriedly approached to check, it was really dry blood. Suddenly, the entire team was full of energy and looked around nervously. Suddenly, another person screamed. Chen Tao frightened his heart, and asked hurriedly, what's the matter? The man was pale, pointed at something in the grass, his tongue was knotted, Tao. Brother Tao, grass. There is a hand in the grass. Chen Tao hurriedly pushed away the people and approached, and looked at the grass, the hand was already swollen and rotting, and a few live maggots were still squirming on the flesh, and 7 or 8 flies were buzzing around the rotting flesh. Brother Tao, look at the wound on this hand, it looks like it was bitten off alive. The people in the team commotion, there won't really be zombies in this forest, right? Chen Tao looked around the slightly gloomy forest, and the alarm bell in his heart was loud. Before he could analyze it, he immediately took out the walkie-talkie. Call Group A, call Group A, there is something in Group B, there is something in Group B, please answer when you hear, over. Call Group C, call Group C, Group B has a situation, Group B has a situation, please answer when you hear it, over. Withdraw, withdraw, withdraw quickly. Chen Tao issued an emergency retreat order, but it was too late. The brother who was at the end of the team was suddenly caught by a zombie who sprang out. The brother only screamed and didn't know where he was dragged. A thin layer of cold sweat broke out on Chen Tao's forehead, and he quickly squeezed his gun, and said to everyone, everyone took out the guys, got together, and moved out of the forest. Everyone hurriedly took out the guns around their waists, gathered together and quickly retreated out of the woods. Group C and Group B are both located on the south side of the island. The person in charge of Group C heard the call for help from Group B and immediately led the team to the direction of Group B. After the C personnel arrived, there was a lot of movement in the forest, gunshots, and if there were screams. Zhang Yang, the person in charge of Group C, did not dare to act rashly, and only led the group members to guard the first-class captain outside the forest. Brother Yang, the members of Group B have not come out yet, should we go in and help out? A member of Group C stepped forward and asked tentatively. Zhang Yang looked back at him, his face looked very bad. Did you not hear the movement inside? We rushed over from the forest in the southeast direction, and the time is almost 20 minutes. 20 minutes, you can still hear the shooting inside. Voice, people in Group B estimate. Zhang Yang didn't say any more. Brothers all tighten the string. If a zombie rushes out of the forest, it will go headshot. Zhang Yang said loudly to the brothers behind him. The movement in the forest gradually diminished, but there was still no living person coming out of it, and the C team members became more and more nervous. He didn't dare to blink his eyes, for fear of blinking, a zombie suddenly popped out of nowhere in the next second. They were all people who had escaped from Yunjing City, and they knew the fear of being surrounded by zombies. Suddenly, the clattering of branches and rapid footsteps sounded in the forest, as if something was about to rush out of the forest. The personnel of Group C all clenched the guns in their hands, tightened their nerves, and stared at the direction of the sound source. They waited less than half a minute, but it seemed that they had waited for nearly an hour. Zhang Yang saw the figure and slowly pulled the trigger. A person in Group C suddenly yelled, "Don't shoot everyone, it's Brother Tao." Zhang Yang looked intently and found that it was Chen Tao. His nervous nerves relaxed a bit, but he immediately raised his handgun, because Chen Tao was also following an unrecognizable zombie. The whole face of the zombie was red flesh, and the gums were also exposed, and he was reaching out his hands to try to catch Chen Tao who was running in front of it. When Zhang Yang was shocked, he quickly squeezed the trigger and shot a shot at the zombie behind Chen Tao. Because the zombie was running, Zhang Yang's shot was not accurate and only hit the zombie's eyes. Zhang Yang hurriedly several more shots were fired, and it hit the zombie's head. The zombie's head was blooming, and the brain and minced meat splashed on Chen Tao's body. There were many blood stains on Chen Tao's body. One hand tightly clutched the wound on his neck, and one hand was holding a gun. He almost staggered out of the woods. He saw that the zombie chasing him was dead. The strength of the wool dangling loosened, and the whole body fell to the ground, panting heavily. Everyone knew that Chen Tao was bitten by a zombie, so no one dared to approach him. Chen Tao threw himself on the ground for a while, then stood up his head with difficulty, calling out Zhang Yang's name. "A Yang, A Yang." Zhang Yang swallowed nervously and raised his foot close. A brother in Group C quickly grabbed Zhang Yang and said, Brother Yang, don't go there." Zhang Yang looked back at him, and his voice trembled with nervousness. "It's okay, I'll be careful." Of course he didn't want to take the risk, but Tao Zi ran out of it desperately. There must be something important to tell him. Group B, so many people died, not one left, don't you know how many zombies there are? Zhang Yang approached slowly, and Chen Tao threw himself on the ground and exhaled in pain. Iong, Iong, don't get too close to me. I was hurt too badly. It's probably only an hour or two. I have something important to tell you. You can kill me when I'm finished. During the speech, Chen Tao hummed in pain. There are probably more than 20 zombies in the forest plus the 9 people in Group B, it is estimated that there will be more than 30. And there is that those zombies are not simple, unlike the ones we have contacted before, they seem to have plans. Strategy, otherwise the 10 people in Group B will not be completely wiped out. You need to focus on giving feedback to the captain on this matter. Okay, that's all I want to say, you shoot. Does he? Zhang Yang shouted out his name in pain, and asked him to shoot his brother's head with his own hands. He really couldn't do it. Does he? Do you have anything? Zhang Yang paused and said the last words with difficulty. My family members have already died in Yunjing City. There is nothing to worry about. I can't blame the brothers in Group B. They all died. Hey, who would have expected that kind of situation? Does he? Don't blame yourself. Iong, don't say anything, I don't want to become a zombie and hurt my former brother, you quickly do it. Zhang Yang hesitated a few times, and aimed his gun at Chen Tao's head. Team. The captain is here. A person in Group C suddenly shouted. Zhang Yang hurried to Li Nanzheng, who had rushed over, and said, Captain, everyone in Group B has sacrificed. Li Nanzheng looked solemnly, and said, Didn't you mean to retreat as soon as you discover the situation? Only Dazi in Group B came out, but Dazi was also bitten. Li Nanzheng hurriedly approached Chen Tao and immediately noticed the zombie not far from Chen Tao. He looked at the zombie in his mind and remembered what Han Qi said to him, and stood there for a while. Li Nanzheng asked Chen Tao, Didn't it mean to retreat immediately when the situation is discovered? How could this be? Chen Tao replied feebly, Captain, when we are ready to retreat, it is too late. The light in the forest is not good. Those zombies took advantage of the geographical advantage and broke out into several waves and disrupted our position. Captain, those zombies are very strange. They. Before Chen Tao finished speaking, he began to cough violently, his whole body twisted into a strange angle, and he kept twitching. He knew that Chen Tao was about to become a zombie, he didn't hesitate, took out his handgun and pointed it at Chen Tao's brain, and directly shot his head. Zhang Yang stood by and looked at Li Nanzheng in shock, and asked, What about Dazi's corpse? You arrange for a few brothers and the corpses of the zombies to be burned together. After the 2 bodies were burned, Li Nanzheng led a team back into the team. Captain, what about the zombies in this forest? One of the brothers asked. Go back and report to the top first. We have already lost a lot of brothers. We have to consider this matter for a long time and try to get these zombies in one pot at a time without leaving any harm. Li Nanzheng took Zhang Yang to report the whole matter to the chief of the operations section. After hearing this, Zheng Hai, the chief of the operations section, felt that the situation was urgent. Zheng Hai reported the whole incident to Minister Su Zongheng in detail, and suggested that the Armed Forces Department immediately organize an action team to wipe out the zombies in the forest in one fell swoop. Su Zongheng touched his chin and thought for a while, looked at the 3 standing people, and kept pressing the spring pen. Those zombies are hidden in the woods. He was obviously a little unbelievable. Minister, although I didn't enter the woods, it's a matter of 10 or so brothers that they were so alive. Also, I saw a zombie chasing Chen Tao out of the woods. Chen Tao was indeed killed by the zombie. Su Zongheng nodded thoughtfully, so is it enough to send 5 teams? Minister, I suggest that all 10 teams of our ministry should be deployed, using net closing tactics, and direct the wave of zombies in the forest. 10 teams. Su Zongheng muttered to himself in a low voice, Xiao Li, what do you think of a closing tactic? Li Nenzheng used his index finger to draw a simple diagram of the forest on the desktop, and demonstrated. All 10 teams were dispatched to surround the forest in the southwest, and then slowly went deep into the forest, searched in all directions, saw one shot and killed the other, let them know one can run away. He smiled and nodded, well, it's a good tactic. Then send 10 teams, and Xiao Li will coordinate the specific actions. Minister, sooner rather than later, I suggest starting action early tomorrow morning. Okay, then Chief Zheng, you can also withdraw the team that will be patrolling tonight. Xiao Li will dispatch them. Su Zongheng turned to look at Li Nanzheng. Xiao Li, you can arrange the specific actions. All 10 teams will be dispatched. It is dispatched. I must minimize the casualties for me, but don't lose so many brothers like this time. This morning you did not report that your superiors led the team without authorization, resulting in heavy losses for a team. According to the rules, I want to pursue you. Responsible. Therefore, tomorrow's task must be done beautifully for me, and the merits and demerits will be offset, and I will not be held accountable for today's affairs. Li Nanzheng nodded his head and replied, yes. The night before the extermination operation, Li Nanzheng went to Hanqi on purpose. Standing at the entrance, Li Nanzheng changed his shoes, and said excitedly, Achi, it really is the same as you guessed. Hanqi didn't react for a moment, and asked while pouring water, what's the same? There are really zombies in the forest. Han Kai's expression changed a little, and he asked, how many? The brothers who went in reported that there were about 20 or so, and there should be about 30 now. 20? That Yan Han's predictive dream was really right. Now 30? What's the matter? I divided a team into 3 groups, each with 10 people. The group that met the zombies in the woods died. Only the group leader ran out, but was also bitten by the zombies. Li Nanzheng said. Sentimental. Is the loss so serious? Han Qi couldn't believe it. The people in the armed forces department were well trained. How could 10 people face 20 zombies like this? According to Chen Tao's description, the zombies in the forest seemed to be very difficult to deal with, and he didn't make it clear. I guess the zombies in the forest should have the same intelligence as you said. Then how are you going to deal with them? Hearing Han Kai's question, Li Nanzheng quickly explained his plan in detail with great interest. After hearing this, Han Qi nodded and felt that the plan was feasible, but he still advised Li Nanzheng to be cautious. Before Li Nan was born, Han Qi asked Yan Han if he had dreams about zombies in the woods in the past 2 days. Yan Han shook his head and said that the dreams were not controlled by her, and she didn't do it every night. Dreaming of foreknowledge, she hasn't dreamed much in the past 2 days. Han Qi was obviously a little disappointed, and worried that this matter would add some more variables, so he repeatedly said something that made Li Nanzheng cautious. Then the two chatted a few more words, and Li Nanzheng was ready to go back. On the way home, Li Nanzheng came across a middle-aged woman who was devastated while passing through the alley. The woman was in her early 50s and wandered in the alley as if she lost her soul. She looked like a zombie looking for prey from her back alone. As soon as Li Nanzheng wanted to touch the gun, the woman looked back at him. It turned out to be a person. He heaved a sigh of relief and walked forward and asked, "Sister, why are you still hanging out this night? It's dangerous, don't you know?" The elder sister replied in a daze, "I'm looking for Chu Liuxiang, it doesn't know where it went." Hey! Li Nanzheng made a look that he didn't understand what the eldest sister was saying. Chu Liuxiang went out to the night before, and then he didn't come back. Before, he always came back on time when he went out and pooped. I waited at home until 11 o'clock the night before and he didn't come back. It was too late and I didn't dare to go out looking for him. When I went to look for it early the next morning, I couldn't see Chu Liuxiang's shadow anywhere, but Chu Liuxiang's POO was found. Only then did Li Nanzheng understand. It turned out that Chu Liuxiang was a dog. Whose name gave it? Sister, is Chu Liuxiang your dog? Yes. Sister, this dog is like this. It's more fun. Maybe it came back after playing outside for a few days. The islands are not flat these days, and it's more dangerous at night. I advise you to go home quickly and don't look for dogs outside. Yes, maybe Chu Liuxiang will be back tomorrow. Hey, Chu Liuxiang is the dog left by my husband. My husband passed away a few years ago, and this dog is left to depend on me for life. Chu Liuxiang used to be very good, no matter how late he played, he would go home. What happened this time? The eldest sister muttered to herself as she walked to another alley. When she left, she still shouted, Chu Liuxiang, Chu Liuxiang. Seeing that the eldest sister refused to listen, Li Nanzheng insisted on looking for the dog. He wanted to catch up and persuade. But when he raised his hand to look at his watch, it was already 9 o'clock. He had to organize his brothers to wipe out the zombies in the morning, so he quickened his pace and walked to his dormitory. Early the next morning, Li Nanzheng organized 10 teams according to the original plan. Before the operation, he repeated the action plan and precautions carefully. Minister Su Zongheng and Section Chief Zheng Hai also came to inspect, and Li Nanzheng retold the precautions and action plan. After that, Zheng Hai and Su Zongheng each spoke a few more morale-boosting scenes, and then Li Nanzheng led everyone to the woods in the southwest. After the members of the operation team arrived at the forest, Li Nanzheng's brothers surrounded the forest in a scattered manner, and slowly approached the center of the forest. This method really worked. The operation team members saw a zombie and killed one. When everyone came to the center of the forest, there were only 2 casualties. Because the people were scattered during the siege, Li Nanzheng didn't know how many zombies were killed. The person in charge of each team started to count the number of zombies killed by the team, and summarized them here. After the person in charge finished, he reported the number to Li Nanzheng one after another, but the more he listened, the more things were wrong. How come they are 1 or 2, and some teams are simply 0, and the total number is only 9, why only 3 points? 1. This number is obviously wrong. Li Nanzheng's sharp nerves immediately noticed something was wrong, and hurriedly ordered the brothers to retreat. Before the operation team members had time to retreat, a strange sound suddenly sounded in the forest, as if something was rushing towards them quickly. Everyone is on alert. Li Nanzheng hurriedly shouted again. Everyone clenched their guns, holding their breath, waiting for something rushing towards them. Suddenly, a hound-like animal sprang out of the forest. Li Nanzheng took a closer look, and it turned out that it was a zombie dog with shed hair. Is it a dog? Dog? Li Nanzheng's brain was running fast, and he suddenly remembered the eldest sister who was looking for the dog last night. Could it be that those zombies thought of this step? The zombie dog's jumping ability is very strong. It sprang out of the forest and jumped directly on top of their heads. Several brothers with quick eyes and hands hurriedly fired a few shots and blasted the dog's head. Soon, dozens of zombie dogs with shed hair and mouth full of fangs sprang up in the forest. Oh my god, where did so many dogs come from? A squad leader beside Li Nanzheng complained with a vibrato. The people in the team didn't have time to think, they all instinctively pressed the trigger to shoot and kill the zombies that came out from all directions. But those dogs were too agile. When there was only one dog, everyone could shoot together. But when there were more targets, the people in the squad became a little rushed and shot a lot of empty guns. Zombie dogs use their agile mobility and the geographical advantage of the forest to jump from the air and bite when they see people. The team members can't resist Ben. Li Nanzheng looked at the chaotic action team, and instantly realized his mistake. Originally, they planned to take the net-retracting tactics to wipe out the zombies, but he didn't expect them to be dumped by these zombies. What to do? What to do? He asked himself in his head, but couldn't think of a way. The captain of the second team, Zhou Zihan, saw Li Nanzheng always standing in a daze, bumped him with his elbow, and said loudly, "Nanzheng, what are you in a daze at this time?" Li Nanzheng just shook his mind from anxiety, and quickly took out his gun to shoot the zombies that were desperately biting. After all, they were dominant in number, and the zombie dogs were killed by them all in the end. Li Nanzheng looked at the brothers who were bitten and roughly counted them. There were about 10. Li Nanzheng subconsciously thought about the consequences he needs to bear, and just about to order a retreat, suddenly, a gunshot sounded from the action team. Everyone was attracted by the gunshot, and the original Operation Team 3 shot and killed a bitten member of the 4 team. Another member of the 4th team immediately smashed the person who had just shot, and cursed, "What are you doing?" The man was expressionless, sneered, and said, "He was bitten, didn't you see it? Don't kill and wait for him to become a zombie and bite me." The popularity of the 4th team was anxious, and he kicked him hard and shouted, "What's wrong with the bite? Our 4th team is not yet your 3rd team's turn to do it. Who dares to do it again, I will fight him desperately." The person who was kicked in the 3rd team got up, patted the dirt on his body, and headshot a bitten member of the 4th team again with an angry face. After the shot, the people from the 3rd team and the 4th team completely scuffled together. Seeing that the situation was about to lose control, Li Nanzheng immediately fired a shot into the sky and shouted, "Is this the place where you were fighting?" However, the people of the 3rd and 4th teams were already blushing, and there was no time to listen to Li Nanzheng's orders. At this time, another shot rang from the crowd, which was shot by the captain of the 4th team. The captain of the 4th team headshot a bitten member of the 6th team. After firing the shot, he cursed and said, "Fuck, when all of our 4 teams die. If you want to kill all those who were bitten. Don't just bully our 4 teams." As soon as the 4th team leader's voice fell, there was another gunshot in the crowd, and the 4th team leader shot in the center of the eyebrow. Everyone was stunned, and soon realized the seriousness of the matter. The 4th team shouted "Captain," and their captain fell to the ground. The 4th team grabbed the captain's body and nearly roared, "Who the shot? Who the shot?"